Okay, guys, we are back with Nerchio, and we are talking obviously Starcraft and a bit. And we started out about talking what does it mean to be a pro gamer, some aspects of how you approach your training or your lifestyle as a full-time pro gamer. I would like to go on a bit and approach the topic of Starcraft itself. But before we go there, I want to find out a last thing that's more a fan question now. First of all, what does nurture mean? And is there any meaning to it? And then obviously also, why did you choose Zerg? So first the question about nurture.
All right, so I mean, Nerchio doesn't really mean anything. It was a connection of like parts of the words, because at some point, when I was younger, probably everybody had a moment like that where they just used silly nicknames online, like I don't know, Shadow or Master or whatever. And then it was like, okay, it's time to stop. It's just silly. I can't play like that because I need to, play on my like own name and be different from other people. So I just looked for something that sounded quite nice to me, or I guess intimidating a little bit, not like a unicorn or whatever.
Yeah.
So I thought in Polish it sounds like Nerchio.
Okay.
But obviously people from speaking in English read it Nerchio, and that's fine too. And that's it basically.
Okay.
I just found out a part of like a word that sounded pretty nice, didn't really mean anything, and it stuck with me because I became good. And then changing the nicknames is, I don't know, it's not a good idea. And to be honest, I don't really want to change my nickname, so
That's good. I mean, yeah, and I like the sound of it. I even like the sound better in Polish, so it's actually Nerchio.
yeah.
Okay, cool.
It
Maybe,
sounds a little bit rough, but
yeah.
to be honest, these days I don't even know which one I prefer. It
Okay.
obviously it started with that one, but
Uh-huh.
then like the first, I think like day 9 was like one of the first people that casted my match, and he was reading it Nerchio, and it sounds kind of nice as well. So it's fine. Actually, both are fine to me. Wherever somebody, and these days I have so many nicknames. King Artur, Gotcho,
Mm,
wherever. So to be
for
honest,
sure.
like
Yeah.
it's all fine.
Yeah. Good to know. So we will choose. I choose Gotcho. I still like that one. But
Yeah, it's funny.
um, you played a lot in the early times of StarCraft 2. You played a lot of random. And at some point, you decided, no, man, I have to focus on a one race to become better. That's at least what I learned.
Yeah.
And you
Um,
chose, yeah, sorry.
yeah, exactly what you're saying is at the start, I was so excited about the game when it first came out, and it was so fun. But basically, sticking to one race sounded like a boring idea. So I played random for a long time,
Mm.
and it was really fun. It would probably still be fun to this day, but you have to be honest with yourself, and how StarCraft 2 works. Playing all 3 races is impossible, basically, at a competitive level. So
Hmm.
I at that point, the race I liked the most was Zerg. It's probably the race that I like the most today, but it's probably not the best race for winning tournaments. Although, yeah, I mean, I know I chose Zerg. I don't regret this idea, and I
Hmm.
think it was fun. The most fun race for me in terms of like lore, basically aliens and stuff, and how it worked.
Hmm.
I think it was a little bit different in Wings of Liberty, because now the game changed, so Zerg is a lot more mechanically demanding, which I don't exactly like, for let's say.
So
Compared to Protoss, for example, you know.
okay, yeah.
The game is very, very fast right now, and it's very easy to do mistakes. So I think both Zerg and Terran are very hard races, a lot harder compared to Protoss.
So so you liked it. You liked Zerg more out of a gut feeling. You felt more attracted to them. Somehow the lore and the playstyle also, and that point in time.
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of stuff happening in StarCraft for me that I do because I follow my gut, let's say. That this is also why I'm considered to be a great player in terms of like army movement and stuff like that, because it's something that you cannot plan ahead. It's something that comes up to you in the game suddenly. So in the past, I just felt like Zerg is the race for me. And looking back at it, it was probably the right decision because, well, I consider myself to be pretty successful in StarCraft. Yeah, that's it basically.
You can say that, yeah. Okay, we are touching now on StarCraft 2, the game itself. So obviously there's a lot to be said about the game, the history of the game, balance, and the tournaments and all that. And I would like to start out with asking you about the state of the game. How do you feel about StarCraft 2 as a game right now on a competitive level? So on a competitive level, do you feel for yourself there's a lot of challenges? You touched on the mechanical side of it at this point in time. Is there maybe something you can add or elaborate on?
I mean, I think Legacy is the best game that we had from like all the StarCraft 2 versions, let's say. I think the previous Heart of the Swarm was not the most fun game. This is also the time where I was finishing my studies and I didn't enjoy playing StarCraft then that much. This is why my results got a lot worse also. But when Legacy of the Void came out, I was also finished my studies and it just felt great. It feels great to this day. I mean, the meta game, let's say, got a little bit more stale because it's always like that at the start. There's so much stuff to do and the game isn't figured out yet. These days, it's mostly the same strategies that we use. I mean, there is a couple of them at least, but it changed a little bit. I always like when the game changes a lot because this is where I feel like I'm very good at the game. But still, Legacy of the Void is the addition that I probably like the most. And thanks to that, I can continue playing StarCraft and enjoying what I actually do.
So, could you maybe go into, could you give an example? So you mentioned that at this point in time, Zerg is mechanically more demanding than, let's say, in Heart of the Swarm. Could you give us an example of that? What do you mean by that?
I mean, the difference is from Wings of Liberty mostly because then it was 3, maybe 4 bases at most, and the game was a lot slower. And right now, it's like, you know, you have, let's say, a 20-second window in which you have to inject perfectly all bases every 20 seconds, basically. You have to creep spread in most of the matchups. Let's say sometimes you can avoid doing it and be fine, but those are really 2 important things that you just can't not do, you know. You must do them. And then the larva mechanics is not the easiest thing ever also compared to other races that can make both workers and units at the same time. So I think, and basically, I feel like Zerg can lose the game by making one mistake, and so you can lose in a matter of seconds. I mean, this is how StarCraft 2 works, but I feel like it's even more like that for Zerg. So if you add all that up in Legacy of the Void, and I think Koreans were saying the same stuff at the same time, that game is a lot faster, which is good and bad at the same time, depending on who you ask, you know.
Yeah, I mean, for me as a viewer, mostly, obviously, I like the fast pace a lot of times. But yeah, okay, that sounds quite challenging. And obviously, yeah, as a Zerg player myself, although I'm like really bad, but that's the thing that makes it bad for me, or not easy for me as a normal casual player. So it's interesting to hear that from your side also. But Zerg in general at this point in time, how would you consider the race itself? Does it really only depend on the player, or I mean, you touched on the mechanics now, but what I'm trying to ask is how much can the player influence the chances of Zerg winning a tournament?
I mean, obviously, it's like for every other race. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't be playing the game right now. Even though I say all this stuff on Twitter and stuff where people sometimes dislike me because of that, like the game is still in a, let's say, great spot compared to other real-time strategy games. And to be honest, like I can only play 1v1 games competitively because I just dislike depending on other people in terms of my results. So I wouldn't feel very good, let's say, being the best player in the team, and then some people wouldn't be that good. So I just like 1v1 games, and so far, like, Starcraft is the main game for one-on-one competition. So I still like it a lot, even though it has its flaws, you know.
For sure. Yeah, and that brings me also to my next question. Thank you for that. So you have been around since the beginning of StarCraft 2. I think we can easily say that. What do you say, in your opinion, what changed to the good or positive since the beginnings, and what changed maybe to the negative regarding the game?
I think StarCraft got better and better as the time went by, to be honest. So the bad things that were in the past that are not there anymore mostly are, like, for example, in Heart of the Swarm we had 2 or 3 hour games which were absolutely horrible to watch and horrible to play. So it was just horrible for everyone, and they basically removed that part of the game. So right now in Legacy of the Void, the longest game that you can see is maybe like 1 hour or something. If it goes beyond that, it's like 1 in 1,000 or even less. So the game is faster. That's what I said before, and it kind of translates to that. And it actually feels good because, let's say, if my 8-hour practice day contains 3 games in Heart of the Swarm, now I can actually play like 40, you know? So it actually feels good because you have more to learn from. It's more exciting because you're not playing 3-hour games where nothing is happening. You can actually, influence the game. You can outplay your opponent. So
Yeah.
as I said, like, StarCraft just got better as the time went by. This is why I like the game right now. If it stayed like it was in Heart of the Swarm, I'm not sure if I would be playing right now.
For sure. So, what still invokes your passion? When do you get excited in StarCraft 2? Is it watching? Playing the. What gets you excited while playing the game, and what do you like to watch? What gets you excited then?
It's hard to say about watching because in the past I somehow enjoyed watching StarCraft a lot more than these days. I'm not sure if it's the reason, because in the past I feel like I like the casters a lot more, or what they were saying. Maybe it's just how internet changed through all these years, because at the start we were all like very serious about it, and these days it's mostly like jokes. Sometimes we're not even talking about the game happening. And in the past, I like to watch my games and see what the casters are thinking about the strategies, about what's going on. And these days, it's the amount of interesting things is very limited in terms of like watching StarCraft and hearing the casters. So I still like to watch like the best players that are considered to be in the world. So if it's like Dark versus, I don't know, Maru, obviously I will be watching. And in terms of playing, it's hard to say. So as I said, I still like StarCraft. It's not like a blowing passion or anything like that, I would say. But I think what I like the most is one-on-one competition. So that's I like competition, and I like to get better every day. So I feel like StarCraft is a great thing for that. And I think most other people playing StarCraft 2, they also like competition and, you know, like winning and losing even at the same time, you know. Because if you were winning 100% of your games, it would probably get boring really quickly also.
For sure. Yeah, I also am under the impression that you are not, as a person, you are much more intellectual person, and not necessarily like me. I'm a very emotional person. Like I get excited when I stand up in front of my computer when I watch games. But it's probably also a personality thing, how you approach the whole question of passion or something like that. So let's talk a bit further about StarCraft 2 as an industry. I would like your opinion on that. How do you see the industry as a player at the moment? Do you feel it's sustainable? Is it going well? Will it go on like that forever? How do you see it?
So first thing I like the most is Blizzard announcing basically the support for WCS events. I think they said last year that they're gonna do it at least until the end of 2018. It was a big step, let's say, for pro gamers in StarCraft 2, because you actually have something to look forward to in the future. So we get at least 4 events next year. So we have something to practice for. In the past, we were kept in the dark a little bit. So this is the thing that I like these days. Then I feel like last year was a little bit better, because I remember like there was absolutely no time where I was basically at home. It was just event, and then like 3 weeks, another event, and another, and there was like events all over the place. And this year I think I was only at 4 events so far. There is one more and maybe one more coming up, or actually with GSL versus the world there is a few, you know. But if it wasn't me, and it would be someone from outside of top 8 of WCS, I feel like there could be a lack of events for those people to participate in. So this is something I don't like, but this is also something that I accept if it's not gonna change. This is why maybe I'm gonna consider, let's say, doing masters or something like that next year, because if you have only 5 events in the year or 6, and like 3 of them are during summer, where you don't go to school anyway or university, then you have all the time in the world to do anything you want in the time where events are not actually happening, you know. I think I remember there was like 3 or 4 months of break at the start of this year between like the last season and this season. So I feel like that time could be spent a little bit better instead of just playing StarCraft 2. But in general, it's the scene is still a big step up from a couple of years ago. And I always said, you know, I'm not afraid of playing against Koreans, but I felt like foreigners or StarCraft 2 in general needed something for foreigners to play in, where we have some free space actually, you know, to play in without being crushed by Koreans coming from the greatest environment of practicing.
For sure, yeah. And I mean, I think what you are saying is, in a way, that that idea or that concept succeeded, because now, at least for me as a fan, I look at the scene, or let's say the European scene, that is still fairly strong and brought up some new guys. And I mean, I think there are some people like you that can compete against Koreans at this point in time. And I think that has to do with what you are saying, the change of the system and more free space to practice more, and yeah, not to be crushed and crushed is a good word by Koreans. Yeah.
I mean, the point is that Starcraft 2, or even like any esports game in general, is not big enough to support like only local scenes. Basically, they're not very sustainable for, like, you can't live your life winning only like Polish events in CS:GO, you know, for example. Even though that game is like bigger than StarCraft 2, quite a lot bigger, you can't live by winning like only Polish events. So unless you know, you went on to become the best player, then you just didn't have enough money to, like, you know, for you to play StarCraft 2 wouldn't be worth it then. And I think that Koreans had quite a big advantage coming from StarCraft 1 with the pro houses environment and stuff like that. So we had a hard time catching up to them from our environment. I mean, we had a couple of foreigners, including me, that could put up a fight against Koreans, but it was just a couple of people. Yeah. And these days, I'm content with what we have. Kespa, fortunately or unfortunately, died, let's say, in Korea. And now I feel like, you know, Koreans and foreigners are more on equal grounds.
Yeah, so some leveling happened, some balance in a way. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what I am curious about also, we are talking a lot about now the environment of StarCraft 2, the industry, the setup of the players, the professional scene, and you have been on professional teams since your early days. I think you have been on Acer for 5 years, if I'm right, no? 2000.
I think 4.5 actually, or something like that.
So, and I mean that was a big thing when Acer formed their team, and it was you had a fantastic setup, and you had a team house, you had a very good player setup. So, and now you transitioned to a new team, and also obviously being sponsored by Red Bull. That was, for me, I was very happy when I heard that. In general, also that Red Bull entered the scene in a way. So, as a player, what would you say? What does make a good team or a good sponsor, and what would you consider to be a good team or a good sponsor at this point in time, except for your own guys, obviously?
I think the most important thing, and it was really hard to achieve that in esports, to get teams like that, was just booking your stuff in advance, let's say, you know, that we know DreamHack Summer is coming up, let's say in 2 months. So you talk to your team and, hey guys, can I go to this place and this place? I want to participate in this tournament. And I know from my past that, you know, when I was still starting it was just a struggle. People booking your stuff at the last couple of days before going to the tournament. So we were like, okay, what's going on? I don't have a flight and hotel still. And so I know it's still a problem for a lot of people, since I'm talking with a lot of guys from the scene as well. There's not that many teams that care about you 100%, you know. But I'm one of those guys. But this is also my gut feeling, you know. I actually left Acer 1 month before it basically closed. Again, I don't know, it was just luck or it was a really good gut feeling. And then I went to Euronics Gaming, which was like one of the best decisions in my career at that time, to leave Acer a little bit earlier than it closed, and then Euronics Gaming took me in.
For sure.
So I to be honest, I can't really say I was in bad teams in my career, because I always made good decisions and based on like facts, and I looked into the teams every time. So yeah, I don't really remember, except maybe like my first Polish team at the start of my career, which was quite bad. But after that, it was only, only better and better. And I didn't expect, to be in a place I am right now, basically being in Euronics Gaming and being sponsored by Red Bull at the same time. This was totally unexpected after 7 years of Starcraft 2.
Yeah, very nice. So you would say a good team is a team that at least gets the booking right in time?
I mean, for me, that's the most important thing, because I just like to have things planned. You can probably tell from what I'm saying in this interview. I like to have things planned, and when I know what's going on, then I feel, I don't know, secure. And that also, I said that, I like what Blizzard said, for that they're gonna support the WCS events for 2 years, because I like to know what's going on in the future and not like live week by week.
Sure. And I mean, I think, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think everybody wants to have some sort of security, except maybe when you are 17 or so. Just coming back a bit to that question of being part of a professional team, and do you think there's enough sponsors at the moment? Do you think we, as a scene, I was, or maybe I have to start over. I was surprised when Euronics Gaming came up. I never saw them. For me, they were never present on the gaming map. Like, I never saw them. But then I picked up that I think they're also sponsoring a CS:GO team, and so they are trying to grow in that regard. And I was very happy when they came, because I feel, or Team Expert now, for example, Scarlet and the others, that was a very positive surprise. How do you see that as a player? I mean, do we need more guys, more big companies coming in, or is it fine like that? Or
I mean, yeah, if not for Euronics Gaming, maybe there would be a lack of teams for me at the time. There is some people, that are very good in the scene. For example, Elaser right now, he just won a tournament, WCS, and he's not, he doesn't have a team. Yeah, he still doesn't have a team. I know he has some offers, obviously, but this needs to be satisfying offers also, right? It's not like, oh, hey, we're just a small team, we're gonna give you $100 for your effort. So that's not really it, right? So obviously there's a little bit of lack of teams for some of the players. I'm not exactly sure why. I guess they just want to go into different games, but I feel like for the amount of money you have to put into Starcraft 2, you got actually quite a lot back compared to other games, because obviously players in CS:GO have a lot bigger salaries than we do, and it's just there's a lot of kids watching those games too. So I mean, I'm not a sponsor, and I'm not an expert how business works. Otherwise I would have a business myself. So and I would be sponsoring whatever team, but there is obviously a lack of teams a little bit, but everything starts somewhere. I think more important thing is for the scene itself to be like more positive, you know, because I can see a lack of people. For example, you know, a tournament finishes and we're not really excited about the games that happened. We're not really discussing the strategies or whatever. It just, okay, the tournament finishes, this guy won, see you next time. It's like,
Yeah.
I remember in like, you know, 2012, 13 and stuff, we could live off the same tournaments for like a month or something, you know, and the games that happened or the players that played or the results that was there. And it's like now you did well in one event and people like forget about it the next day. So I feel like maybe more sponsors would be there if people participating in the scene would behave differently. But on the other hand, it's also how internet changed. And in the past, we were, as I said before, we were more serious. And these days it's memes and jokes. And I feel like some context or like meaningful discussions are lost in between this stuff.
I find that point very interesting that you are raising now, and you mentioned it earlier a bit. Um, uh, it's not on our list now, but um, uh, so I personally I mean I'm an old guy, no? I'm 36 years old, and I have been around since whatever age, and I agree with you in a way that one big thing for me was, for example, in let's say discussing tactics or strategies, to really get passionate about strategy and discuss it for hours and hours. And I was playing a lot of 2v2s with a friend, and I mean we actually invested a lot of time, but it was fun, it was good, and we put a lot of time and effort in that. And I think even on Team Liquid you can see that it got less and less. Like when Pig started his series now at Team Liquid with the strategy things, you probably saw it. That was for me a very positive and nice thing, because that's I care about that type of stuff. But I think I can see what you mean. The lack of enthusiasm or the lack of some positivity in a way. Um, but can you how do you can you point your finger? Why is it like that? What do you think? I mean, it's obviously not easy to give an answer to that, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just what what an average person likes to consume these days. It's just a fun and a quick thing, like a meme. You see a funny picture and oh, it's funny, and you like it, but you like it for 1 minute and then oh, maybe you're gonna copy the picture and make something funny out of it. I mean, I did it like a few times too, because sometimes it is funny, but when every person does it and it happens every day, then you get buried. Like all the meaningful stuff is buried under all the jokes and memes. So, for example, I agree with you that the Pig Daily should be probably more popular than it is right now. But for some reason, people don't enjoy, you know, going like focusing on some of the subjects or the topics. And these days it's dangerous, because if you get serious about something, then somebody else is gonna make a joke and the topic is not serious anymore. So it's like it's basically impossible to get a serious discussion going on in the internet. This is also why I realized at some point, by reading all the stuff, even on Team Liquid, you know, in the past, I enjoyed actually being in the topics like about the tournament and stuff, because people were talking about the games or the strategies. And these days it's like one post about the games, and then it's just 10 posts of jokes, or oh, look at this thing happened, it's so funny. And yeah, I mean, I preferred the internet in the earlier days, let's say. not where it went these days. We'll see in the future what happens. I'm trying to do, I guess, a little bit more serious stuff with my social media, and not only jokes that sell really well. Let's be honest, right? People like this stuff, but yeah.
I like it,
that's
man.
basically it.
I think I'm very happy that you are stating it like that, because I feel, just as somebody from outside, I mean, I'm just like a normal guy on Team Liquid, and that's why that's also one of the reasons why I started to reach out to people like you, or now Tasteless and Zombie Grub and all these guys, that because I feel we have a lack of, in a way, of that a bit seriousness, just in a sense of taking our passion serious. And so yeah, hopefully we don't lose that over the next years. And it's interesting that you say that maybe there is a connection between the community taking themselves serious and the development of the pro scene and all of that. Yeah.
I mean, now what I'm seeing is not only in Starcraft 2 community, but in something else. It's like, at some point it was only jokes, and then people started doing what I'm doing right now, which is, hey guys, look at this. Maybe this is not the way we should be going. So there is like now people fighting back, let's say. And then there is people fighting back those that are fighting back with another series of jokes and stuff. Yeah. And I mean, it's a mess right now, I have to say, but I'm afraid that without people like Pig, for example, who has a great series of his tutorials and stuff, we would have a big lack of serious content,
Yeah, and there's a lot of content being produced that is revolving around the scene or the funny aspects of the game or something like that, but not so much in that discussion maybe. And I think what you also said is interesting, the challenge of if you get serious nowadays, not serious like dead serious and the world is going to end, but taking yourself serious, taking the game serious, that type of thing, then immediately somebody will pop up and say, but why are you so serious? Yeah, it's difficult I think it's very difficult to fight that, because irony, basically what they are using is irony or maybe cynicism or sarcasm. It's very difficult to work against that. And it's very.
I mean, I use it also, but I feel in a lot better way. That this is also why I started streaming, because I decided to stream a little bit, but not very much, because I feel like if I do it less, it's a little bit more serious, I guess. And I feel like the content that I provide by streaming is actually decent, and people like it, not only because of my commentary, which is sometimes funny too, because otherwise it would be boring, but also because, I discuss what I'm doing quite a lot.
Yeah.
On the other hand, we have to be careful, because if other people are streaming all the time, the content is lost once again, because you're doing it too much and it just repeats again and again. This is also why I think for me streaming a little bit is a good balance.
Yeah, and I mean that's obviously a problem on Twitch that you can see all the time. People just streaming, let's say under the World of Warcraft tag, so they stream, officially they are streaming World of Warcraft, but they are actually not playing World of Warcraft, they are doing silly stuff on stream.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's, for me at least, that's not very interesting, but yeah. Thank you very much, man. That before we get lost in that discussion, although I find it's a very, very interesting point that you are raising, the question of how do we approach our game, how do we approach our scene and community. Let's take a quick break and then we come back.